So there is a need for us to always think in terms of investing for a number of things. One, for emergencies. You never know when an emergency happens. You never know when a sickness comes about. You never know when you lose a job. So a Muslim should be prepared for that. You also have kids. When you have kids, they come with an obligation. The obligation to feed them, clothe them, but then when they turn to be 18, you have to worry about their education. And if you worry about their education nowadays, especially with the expense of colleges and universities, I mean, it's an astronomical number. And unless you begin to save, a lot of Muslims that I know of have gone into basically borrowing money in order to pay for education. And even though it's a student loan, which should be subsidized, and some of them are subsidized to a smaller extent, it still hovers around 6%, which is a lot of, which is a high percentage rate. And then, by the time you look at yourself, you're a youngster, and all of a sudden, you're hitting your 60s and 65, and now you have to retire. So you have to save for retirement. So those are three things that you have to always worry about as a Muslim. And a Muslim should not ever be dependent on others, and should not say, oh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of me. No, Allah will take care of you, but on one condition, that you take care of yourself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا. We gave him every single, we provided him with all the causes and all the ways of doing things. فَأَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. He did ijtihad to do even more. So as a Muslim, you should think about your life and think about how I can be a good Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ tells us, الْيَدُ الْعُلْيَا خَيْرٌ مِنَ السُّفْلَى. The upper hand is much better than the hand that receives. We want to be strong Muslims. We want to be rich Muslims. We want to be able to help other Muslims. And that is a position that if we have it, it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So retirement, education, saving goals, all of those. If we look at today, and if we ask anybody between the ages of 18 to 34, 42% did not save a penny. 29% may have saved some. If we look between the ages of 35 to 54, only 29% saved some money for retirement. 21% saved nothing. And even with seniors, they get to be seniors, and only 28% of them did not save any money for retirement. So now they have to rely on their kids. And today's environment, unfortunately, kids are already burdened. The minute they get out of college, they start paying for their loans. Then they have to get married. Then they have a family to support. And parents should not impose or put that burden on their kids. So why do people basically do not pay attention to investing? Some of them say, oh, no time. Where to start? They don't know. And they don't bother to ask. No extra money. Too intimidating. All of these, you can find 1,000 reasons why you should not do something. But a Muslim, when you focus, a person, when they focus and they realize that they have a plan and they can stick to it, they will accomplish a lot. An example of that. If I take a person who invests $450 a month, $450 a month, and another person starts investing the same amount, but they start investing 10 years later. 10 years later. They can put, because they started 10 years later, they can put 3 times as much money and still not earn as much as the person who started 10 years earlier. So the key to investing, before you even think about having a baby, set up an account for them. Because if you do that early, you'll be able to accumulate the kind of wealth or the kind of money that's needed for that kid's education. But if you wait, it becomes really an overwhelming and a cumbersome obstacle. How do people rely on when they try to retire? They rely on Social Security. They rely on their 401k, if they are lucky to be provided one by their employers. Or they can create their own traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. Those IRAs are available even for people who have 401k with their employers, but it also depends on the income. There is a phase-out amount that comes about. The difference between a Roth IRA and a regular IRA, Roth IRA is not deductible, but whatever earnings that it makes is all tax-free. A regular IRA is tax deductible, but once you start taking it, you have to pay taxes on it. And if you are a self-employed, you should definitely look into a sub-plan. You can plow as much as $54,000 into it tax-free. And depending on the income, I mean, that could be a substantial, if you are in the 30% bracket or a 40% bracket, 39.5% bracket, that could be a substantial saving in terms of taxes. Well, Social Security, I just want you to know that Social Security really doesn't pay that much. If you look at it, 35 years average, the benefits, they calculated based on the highest 35 years that you've earned money. And they take an average. And they index it based on inflation. So they look at the inflation factor and they index it. But then how do they calculate the amount of money, amount of benefits that you would be able to get? 90% of the first $895. The first $895 of that average, they give you 90% of it. So if you're on the low income side, you actually have, percentage-wise, you get the highest. But then after $895 to $5,397, they only give you 32%. So I'm giving you a way to calculate your benefits instead of waiting for that statement that comes to you once a year. And if you have anything above that, they only give you 15% of that. The problem is the average at age 62 comes out to $2,209. At 66, $2,861. At 70, $3,770. Now, if I know just from renting, I mean, I'm paying $2,100 for renting, because I came from New Jersey. I'm a new resident here in Chicago. But if you have to pay rent of $2,000, how much money is left for you? Not much. So this is something that you need to think about. Do not rely on Social Security. So Social Security would be a nice supplement, but do not rely on it under any condition. The investment for kids, for education. You can do it through a Roth IRA. You can do it through a 529 plan. The 529 plan is really a state plan, so it's not available to everybody. And unfortunately, we have been trying to get Islamic investment into the 529 plans because it's state-sponsored, and we have not succeeded, at least at the Iman Fund. I don't know if Amana or Azzad have been able to do that. But that's an amount that you can plow a lot of money into it, but it must be used for educational expenses, and you can actually move it from one person, like if the son was able to get a scholarship, you can move it to the second son, you can move it to a relative and all of that. So it's a beneficial plan. You have the Cloverdale, which allows you to put $2,000 for each child. But you have to, those are, you can look at them and say, well, what's $2,000 going to do? But if you start early enough, it accumulates. It accumulates in a very fast fashion. Of course, and luckily, alhamdulillah, if you were here in the 1970s and 80s, when you wanted to look at an Islamic option for investment, you couldn't find it. But nowadays, you have, mashallah, you have many options. You have Azzad, Amana, Iman, Wahid. You have, a lot of Muslims who offer REITs, which is basically investment in real estate. So those options are available to you. Those options now are available to you. You don't have an excuse for not pursuing Islamic investments. All I can tell you is that Iman Fund this year, year-to-date yield, the performance, is 35.06. Meaning that if you had $100,000 invested, you made $35,000. There's no guarantee. In the equity market, it comes with a risk. It could decline 20%. It could decline 5%. In 2008, it declined by 40%. But it has a tendency to recover. Even a major correction is corrected within 22 months. So what happens, even though we had a decline in the past 100 years of over 35 corrections, it all corrected itself. And if you look at the 10-year performance for Iman, Azzad or Iman Fund, they are around 12 to 13%. Fixed investment is not offering anything. You can go with a 10-year CD now, and you only get 2%. And of course, it's haram. Aside from that, it's haram. Even if it was halal, you only get 2%. So this is something that we as Muslims ought to pay attention to. And it is a way of purifying yourself when you purify your earnings. When the Prophet ﷺ says, أعط الأجير أجره قبل أن يجف عرقه. As if most Muslims remember, oh, give the money to the person who worked before his sweat dries out. But it also implies that that Muslim who is working should work hard enough to earn his money in a halal way. And that's what we should do. We should find a way to purify ourselves, purify our income, and the options are available to you, so you have no excuse with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at this point. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.